Thanks for staying with us. Bosasa is back in the spotlight at the state capture inquiry. Former Bosasa auditor Peet Venter is set to take the stand today. eNCA's Vuyo Mvoko is standing by with more details on the story. Now, Vuyo, one doesn't always get excited to hear or see an auditor, but I assume that will be a little bit different with the appearance of Mr. Venter at the inquiry today.
Well, this time around, everyone is excited because from the little, certainly from his own affidavit, I mean, he is the guy who's going to put the one man that has been elusive up until now, and that is Gavin Watson. So his testimony, it is expected, will put Gavin Watson in the crime scene. But for more on the significance of his evidence, I am now joined by Karima Brown. Karima Brown, I mean, we were chatting earlier about why this particular testimony, coming as it does from an auditor, is perhaps more significant than a lot of others that have come before it.
Absolutely, Vuyo. You've hit the nail on the head. Everyone is saying, why is Gavin Watson still out there? Mr. Agrizzi has already been arrested for a 10-year-old investigation. He's been charged together with Linda T. But Mr. Watson is not linked to that case in any way because there's no paperwork. So today, Peet Venter, who is the former auditor, internal auditor of the firm, is going to give testimony. And it is said that his affidavit is explosive because he's got actual evidence that is linking Gavin Watson to racketeering and to tax fraud. And this is expected to nail Gavin Watson in the Bosasa matter, who so far has enjoyed plausible deniability and probably made it very hard for the investigators to charge him. As you can see, he already managed to sidestep the 10-year-old investigation that he made go away with his cooperation with Mr. Zuma at the time and Mr. T. And of course, that is one of the incidents that in many ways cost the life of the first prisons commissioner, Vernie Peterson, because he resisted Bosasa, as you can remember. And of course, he was worked out of the system. He got death threats. He had to be protected. The police officer who came to his house was killed in mysterious conditions. So Mr. Gavin Watson, the elusive Mr. Gavin Watson, is expected to be directly connected with malfeasance linked to Bosasa, the company that he's the head of.
But then one of the most interesting thing that Venter says in his affidavit is that Gavin Watson never signed anything. Yes. So it's going to be interesting indeed to see how he then puts him, on the crime scene.
Yeah. What is interesting is that he was very aware of what Mr. Watson's modus operandi is. And remember, this is Tlhaudi Motsoeneng's modus operandi, this is Tudumieni's modus operandi. They don't sign because they can't then be linked. They just bully people into doing illegal things. But according to Mr. Venter's affidavit, he's actually got actual evidence, invoices, payments that in fact links Mr. Watson to racketeering and to fraud. So he will obviously have to explain his affidavit, and we will have to scrutinize the evidence contained in this affidavit. I think, internal auditors are a bit like secretaries. They have the formal books and then they have the books for themselves. And I think that we're going to learn a lot about Mr. Gavin Watson today in a much more concrete, much more evidentiary level. So you're going to be seeing receipts, and of course the Commission's forensic investigators would have gone through this. The affidavit is in fact on the Mail and Guardian website, and they speak about the fact that Mr. Watson is actually linked in a paper trail to what Bosasa has been about.
And but what's also interesting from what Venter says is that not that Gavin Watson didn't know that someone will eventually have to be held accountable, but he only made sure that it is not him, but everybody else around him.
Absolutely. In fact, Venter says that he was going to throw them all under the bus. And that is the main reason Agritzi and Van Tonder came here. They made the first move before Gavin could implicate them. So they were involved in a preemptive strike against someone who had arranged and stacked the decks in such a way that he would not be able to be held liable from a paper trail point of view. But they kept paper trails because they feared him. You heard all the time how they explain how he threatened them and so on. So I think many of Mr. Watson's employees secretly recorded the things that he told them to do, as we saw in the video, knowing full well that they can be thrown under the bus. In fact, he says Mr. Watson would get rid of people once he doesn't need them, because that was part of getting rid of the evidence. And I think this auditor made sure that he has evidence that Mr. Gavin Watson is in fact involved. So I think we anticipating some interesting information when the commission starts at 10 this morning.
That's where we're going to leave it for now. But of course, Marcel, there is another sidebar to this, if I may call it that. We had an interview last night with the chairperson of the commission, Judge Raymond Zondo, and there was a time I asked him about the commission itself. You'll recall that the secretary to the commission has had to step aside because, again, the allegation is that Bosasa, he received some monies and favors from Bosasa, and from what Judge Raymond Zondo told me last night, he is getting a briefing today about how far the investigation has gone. We don't know whether, in fact, that briefing will have any conclusive proof as to whether the secretary to the commission was or wasn't involved. That's also, of course, something to look forward to today, because Judge Zondo said he will be getting that briefing sometime today. It is important for the commission, of course, to stay clean and not to be seen to have been part of some shenanigans that Bosasa was involved in. But for now, let's take it back to you in the studio in Hyde Park.
Senior anchor Vuyo Mvoko coming to us live there from the state capture inquiry. We will indeed be bringing you more from that inquiry as soon as they start proceedings.